Hello, good to have you back on the Currency Podcast. I'm going to talk about something near and dear to my heart today, and that is the other side of whatever it is that I'm saying about cryptocurrency. That it's really great. How about a new message for you, which is that screw all of that. But screw all of that only because I don't really know. Like I start doing this podcast and then I get in my head like I'm somebody who's promoting cryptocurrency, and then I start to make that judgment like I'm really positive about it. I start to make that judgment like my life or something that I'm highly committed to, and then like that's something that can become you, I guess, like in an unnatural way for anything. Like something that is a judgment that you think you have to stand behind just for other people, just so that you don't look like a liar. If you have other opinions, like I have alternate opinions, but that's kind of the way that the world works. Is it a lot of times it gets summed up to a single narrative, and I am not immune to thinking that I myself need to be summarized into singular narratives. And so because of that, like if you start getting into thought patterns like that, uh, then you might think that you have to keep staying with the same message rather than have nuanced opinions or go back and like point out negatives in something. But like started off saying positive things about cryptocurrency. I felt like I had to keep staying behind that. The reason I do that is because I think it's a good cause overall, and I'm idealistic. The reason I talk about cryptocurrency positively so much is because there is a reason, and I am a good person because I have intentions and I have reasons. And it's not that I'm wrong or that I'm a bad person, it's that I'm a good person. And so part of the reason why I talk about cryptocurrency positively is because like if the entire thing went under, then that means I'm wrong and I am a bad person, obviously. That means I'm a bad person or something like I'm. But I mean what I say about it. I just am idealistic and envision a world that may or may not be possible. I wish that um I believe in that it's like you should go forward trying to say what's important to you. I kind of envision a world where everybody gives their secrets to everybody else, or in other words, states their position, like if the future unfolded to give everybody a platform, which in some senses it's doing. Not that that causes everybody to run to the internet and actually like state things that are important to them, but the reason that I get on here and say these things is because partially I envision a world where everybody is able to do that, because like maybe in the future we live in a world where people aren't um, concerned with keeping their information, that they like keeping information to themselves, but like obviously there'll probably always be people that always keep their secrets, but like I think it's important to state your position. So I reveal to you that I think cryptocurrency is the future because that's what I believe is true about it. And so I'm trying to divulge secrets or be open about things, and I think that cryptocurrency is a good cause um but anyways, today I'm going to talk about reasons why you shouldn't invest in crypto, like negatives that I find about it. And let me do this today before the market goes down too much, so that I don't so that I look better. Like if I was giving you this episode when the market was up really high, and who knows if any, like maybe you guys don't even listen for any of that, so you don't care about the state of the market, but like the state of the market isn't that great right now, and it is like going down the last couple days. I think that it'll continue to go down because honestly, the prices for those are overvalued as it stands now. Um, I think that a lot of people that invested in crypto thought that more would have developed by now in the real world for like things you could buy with it, but there's just a lot that like literal things you can buy. There aren't very many of those that have panned out. And so because of that, I'd say that the basically every cryptocurrency is overvalued because it has not manifested itself to this point, like things you can actually buy with it. And not to say that that wouldn't happen in the future. It's just like it's taking longer, I think, than crypto investors thought. And basically, you shouldn't invest in anything besides Bitcoin and Ethereum. I wouldn't recommend. And at this point, I would recommend you not invest in any of them because I think the market will continue to go down from where it is now. Like you should wait till it finds a lower resting place than what it's at right now before you start investing in it because they're overvalued. But I'm just going to go over some reasons why I think that the entire thing wouldn't be a good idea today. But I'm starting off just stating reasons why I've spoken positively about it in the past is because not because I'm a bad person, so write that down, is because I'm a good person with good intentions. And you know that that's true because that's what I'm saying to you from my own mouth. I'm telling you I'm a good person. How could you deny that? Um, but like what I'm saying is that um, I think it's for a good cause because if you have a global cryptocurrency, this for the entire globe, at that point, every country has access to like the strongest currencies. If every country has access to the strongest currencies, then we would live in a better world than we do now. And that's something that Bitcoin could provide that the US dollar can't because the US dollar is restricted to a single country. Bitcoin is for the entire globe. But if like cryptocurrencies took off, then presumably Bitcoin would bring a lot of countries in Africa through a lot of levels of like industrial revolution that they could just bypass, and then they would have access to something like the US dollar. I mean, like, the thing is, I don't really know enough about currency or, yeah, just the theory of it. I think that I was starting this podcast to go into that. The theory of currency itself because I don't know enough about the theory of that. But the reason why we don't have a definitive answer to put away cryptocurrencies or like why they're on the table is because people don't know enough about currency itself because it's a sort of high-minded concept. But like, I don't know enough about currency to say what is the reason why a global currency is better than a finite one beside than national ones that are restricted to a nation. It's better because like there's limits to the US dollar because it's backed or standardized by the borders of the United States, and a global currency wouldn't be limited to the borders of a country. But beyond that, honestly, I would have difficulty explaining why that would help bring people in Africa out of poverty at the point there was a global currency, like that they have free access to the US dollar because they, in some senses, they already do have access to it. But I know that their whole banking system is really flawed as a result of the national currencies that nations in Africa have to rely on. And they like there'd be a lot more financial equality across the world if we gave our money over to global currencies. And part of the reason that we don't is because uh, people in the United States want to continue to have the strongest currency. So, but like the US dollar is doing a lot better than Bitcoin or Ethereum. And in the previous episode where I'm stating to you about the competition between crypto and fiat currencies comes down to the source code of Bitcoin versus the source code of the United States, which is the Constitution. And that's it's true to say that. I go into stuff like that just because it's fun and it's theoretical. like that might not be the very heart of the situation or the best way of describing it, or like the best way of describing what would win out between fiat currencies and cryptocurrencies. Ultimately, it's like people who invest in crypto think crypto will win out because those are global and fiat currencies are national ones, and so they're limited. And when you see that something is limited to like the borders of a nation, a specific area, you would think that like digital cryptocurrency should be better because they're more liquid automatically. But that's always what makes a currency better, is if it's more liquid or if it goes to more places, like the same way that water does, like where like water reaches the lowest point. Like if a currency has the ability to flow very far, um like then in some senses it's a better river, like a longer river, or a more memorable river, like. But it like a currency is better when it's more liquid. That's why the US dollar is the best currency in the world, or the reserve currency, is because it has the highest liquidity. Or in other words, like, because it is the most ubiquitous and there's the most of it, you can exchange it into something else the fastest. But it's liquid, like it's flowed to every point more than any other currency, because it's reached the most places in the world. Does the US dollar, because the most other national banks across the world have the US dollar. So it's the most liquid, like it's reached the most places, it's gone the farthest, it's flowed the farthest. But currencies are water, basically. Like that's how you'd want to define them, but they're water as opposed to land. But this is part of what I'm saying, that currency is a difficult topic. That's why I wanted to talk about the theory of it overall during the course of this podcast. Really, like, currency is like a river, or but what's important about that is that it's a continuum. It moves, it's in motion. It's that's why they say it's a circulating supply. Like money circulates, that its existence is characterized by being in motion, as opposed to something that is like land, which is stagnant. Like a big piece of land is not in motion in comparison to a river. It's just a single point. Like a piece of land that isn't moving like a river is an identified point, or like it is a point or a position or an object, really. But currency is a difficult concept because it's like a continuum, or it's in characterized by infinity instead of finiteness. Like land or an object or like a country that has specific borders is like a picture or an image or a snapshot or an object or a single point, as opposed to something that's moving, like a motion picture or a river. And so let me give you some reasons why. These are reasons why I have problems with the entire cryptocurrency market. At this point, do I think cryptocurrency is the future? Still, it's like, I don't really know, but like, um, yeah, it might be. I just think it's overvalued as it stands now. So the number one reason I wrote down here for problems I have with the crypto market is that the US dollar is what Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies are listed in terms of. Like, if you look at the rankings of market cap for all cryptocurrencies, they're all in the US dollar. Like, that Bitcoin's value right now is like 32,000, and that's in terms of US dollars. Like, if you're going to pin down what Bitcoin is worth, you have to say that it's worth $32,000. And then that's in comparison to Ethereum, which right now is worth like 2,400, but that's in US dollars. And that's how we state all of the important cryptocurrencies, is in terms of US dollars, because one of the things that's ultimately important about currency, or like deciding which one is the best, is basically which one are we saying is the $1, or which one do we give credit or respect to for saying it has the unit of one, and the one that we do that for is the US dollar. I don't know what would change or how it would change, where we started saying everything is in terms of Bitcoin, where we made Bitcoin the one, and then we're like, US dollars is not secondary to Bitcoin as it stands now, because Bitcoin is, when we talk about it and refer to it, that we're able to talk about it at all. Like, it needs a price point in order for us to explain it to ourselves. Like, what is the unit of a Bitcoin? The unit of a Bitcoin and the unit of every other cryptocurrency is written in terms of the US dollar. That's because the US dollar is the prime unit as we perceive it in the world. It's the prime unit, or in other words, it is the one. And so this is like, what's the most important currency is the one that we're saying this is the $1. The one that we say like its unit is one. That's the most important currency, because they're like, unless things break up into complete chaos and anarchy, then we like, if things were completely chaotic, then we wouldn't need there to be a currency that were like its unit is one. But I don't see how, I mean, I don't know how that future would play out where we don't need there to be something that is a one. So yeah, like, I don't, like, I feel like as long as that's happening, the US dollar is more important. But generally speaking, I would say that the US dollar is better into the future, because like, for a number of reasons, it's already the most powerful, like, among fiat currencies. But let me see if there's something else I have written about the. But there is a, like, the US dollar tether is a cryptocurrency for the US dollar, and it is it's a cryptocurrency for the US dollar. It's a digital currency, but it's the same thing as having US dollars, as having this crypto US dollar tether. And there's actually places that you can stake the US dollar tether. I haven't looked far enough into it, but that would actually be a good thing to do with your money, actually, is get the US dollar tether, because you won't lose any money. It won't go up or down. It tethers the money that you put into the value of the US dollar. And then you can invest it into one of these crypto exchanges that'll give you, you can stake it, and then it'll give you an interest rate, like an annual yield of 10% or something. And that's actually an easy way that you could earn money in the crypto market that you wouldn't be able to just with a regular bank, that like the crypto market provides to you. Like, that's one of the good things the cryptocurrency does. But like, I don't see why. Another reason I wouldn't be sure about the future of the crypto market is because I don't see why people wouldn't just invest in fiat currencies that have been digitized, like the US dollar tether. Why wouldn't all the money go to that, especially when there are staking options for it that'll give you higher interest rates than your regular bank? Like, the future, I would say my best estimate at this point is that the future of cryptocurrency is, it will take over. It's just that you'll have digital versions of the regular dollars now, because of we'll just have digital versions of the same dollars that you already have. Because there's better staking options, you can earn higher interest rates. That's something that the digital market provides for you. And so that's a lot less sexy and adventurous, because there's no risk involved. But it's like, there's no saying that if everybody was moving their money into this new economy of currencies, like the crypto market, there's there's just as many people that don't like to risk things as there are people that do. And like, if you don't like to take risks, you're probably never going to invest in Bitcoin and Ethereum, because those are always fluctuating. Stable coins, which are like fiat currencies that have been digitized, have been made into cryptos, which they have them for a lot of the important ones, but they're like, those are growing in power. Stable coins, like, I feel like stable coins has a bright future, but I don't know that I'd be able to say the same about Bitcoin and Ethereum, because it involves risking your money. It's just that if everybody was putting their money into Bitcoin, there would reach a point where everybody in the world had put their money into it, and then like at that point there wouldn't be any room for it to grow, and then it like at some point it would reach a ceiling. The theory is that like it hasn't reached that ceiling yet because less than 1% of the world has invested into any of cryptocurrencies, but like even if everybody started to put their money into it, there would reach a point where Bitcoin reached its highest thing, or like there wouldn't be enough people left in the world who hadn't invested in it if it's becoming something like the world currency. At some point, it would reach a ceiling, and then you're screwed because it would have nowhere to go but down, and that really fucks with the entire reason to invest in it and the entire perception of it being important. Or like the reason it's important is because people perceive it to be of the future. If you take away if like everybody realizes that it reaches a ceiling, which is like I'm not saying it has reached a ceiling yet. Like it would the ceiling it could reach would be like much higher than it is now. But in the future, if it reached the ceiling, that would take away why people like it because there would be no future where it's gonna grow more. And that would really ruin the entire mystique of the whole thing. Like at the point that it reached the ceiling, the thing would be screwed because at the point that it has nowhere to go but down, it's not fun to invest in it anymore. But if you just invested in stable coins, you wouldn't have to worry about any of that. But like if we lived in a world where everybody was putting their money into digital currencies, probably the US dollar tether would get as much, if not more money than Bitcoin and Ethereum because you're not risking losing it going up or down. Um, but in the future, hopefully, I will talk to you about staking options for US dollar tether. And so, like, that way you would retain money with the US dollar tether. You just retain US dollars that aren't fluctuating, and you would earn a higher interest rate than you get with regular banks because the US dollar tether wants people to put money into their thing, the US dollar tether, whatever that company is. They want people to retain their money in terms of the US dollar tether, so they offer staking options for you to like put it in there long term, and then you get rewarded for like taking the risk of putting money in there long term, but your money would never go up or down. Another reason I have a problem with the crypto market is because like they introduced this thing recently called, well, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a Bitcoin Australian dollar crossover that you can put money into, but it's like this cryptocurrency is tethered to Bitcoin, but it isn't Bitcoin. So it's like the money that everybody's putting into this Australian dollar, it's like a it's like a Bitcoin for the Australian dollar, but it's a different pool of money than the Bitcoin pool of money. And if they kept making these things, which they would, there's a lot of alternate pools of money for Bitcoin, alternate to just the top Bitcoin pool of money, which it's like you only make money on Bitcoin if people are putting money into the Bitcoin pool. And so if everybody in Australia is putting their money into the Australian dollar Bitcoin pool, you don't make money off of Bitcoin. And then if every country in the world made one of these, then that really lessens the impact of what Bitcoin would theoretically grow to in the future. Like if a lot of the money that would have gone into that is being siphoned off into these smaller pools, these national currencies that are tied to Bitcoin. Um, and so it's like that would be a problem, is that Bitcoin really generates this whole network of Bitcoin alternatives that people make money off of in different places. And so because of that reason, it's really like you can make you can make cryptocurrencies out of basically anything, and people have the option to make them. Like another reason why I don't I'm wary about the entire crypto market is just because of the mass introduction of so many different cryptos. Like new ones are being made all the time. The amount of cryptocurrencies themselves is growing quite a bit all the time, and like if that keeps happening, like how would you know which one to invest in? Like especially the more cryptocurrencies that are made, the more it's like, how would you invest in anything besides Bitcoin and Ethereum? Because the only thing that's important are like the reserve currencies in this giant market of currencies. The only ones that would be important are like the top ones because those are the only ones that are like that would have risen above the other ones to be the most popular. And the idea is that somebody will make a currency that the function of it is better than Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then that will become the most popular. But people have already made a bunch of cryptocurrencies that are a better function than both Bitcoin and Ethereum, especially Bitcoin. Like there's probably 1,000 cryptocurrencies that have a function that's more technologically advanced than Bitcoin, but Bitcoin still remains the top one just because people don't want to lose money and they need like that's the one that people would trust the most, um, and like that's the one that might receive that's received the most like practical use to this point, that like you might actually be able to buy something in Bitcoin. It doesn't look like it'll be very easy for you to buy something specifically in a lot of these alternate cryptocurrencies, but it's actually pretty easy to exchange a cryptocurrency into Bitcoin whenever you want in the on crypto exchanges. Like exchanges make it easy for you to switch your money between as many cryptocurrencies as you want. And so that's kind of a nice thing about crypto exchanges that we didn't have before. Like there's not ease of use of fiat currency exchange as much. I mean, at least there isn't awareness of it that that anybody has an app of fiat currencies that they're like holding fiat currencies and exchanging between those. But too many cryptos. I wrote down some reasons that I would be worried about the entire crypto market. I'm just going through all of them. But the like currency is infinite as opposed to that it is finite, but it's like currency is a complex issue because currency is more infinite, or in other words, it's looking at things from the perspective of the entire category, and rather than from a finite perspective that just sees singular things. Like an infinite perspective looks at the entire category and then it gets to categorize within that category or make divisions within it. Like an infinite kind of thing is a spectrum, or a spectrum is a whole category or a width or a bandwidth, and then you get to make divisions within it. But any division you make will just create a new spectrum, or will create one or two subspectrums, and that new spectrum is also an infinite instance or like a category. And that's contrasted with a finite perspective, which just sees singular objects. And the equivalent for this in terms of in the currency world is like cryptocurrencies versus NFTs. NFTs is a finite perspective. Whole cryptocurrency is an infinite perspective, but it's like currencies are infinite because they get to set the rate at which they get to set the unit. And so the US dollar is a currency and it does that. It sets the unit, or in other words, like the way that it's divided is in terms of ones, in terms of one US dollar. And since like the US dollar has this primacy of sorts, we look at Bitcoin and we say that the one for Bitcoin is like $32,000. But what I'm saying is with a cryptocurrency, they set the supply, like Bitcoin wrote its own supply. That's the same as setting its category or making the division that it chooses to make within its category. And it's like a cryptocurrency is an infinite perspective because you could only figure out Bitcoin's true worth by looking at its market cap, which I said incorrectly in the past episode was like 1.5 trillion or something like that. It's actually at like zero point 0.7 trillion is Bitcoin's total market cap, but that's its worth. But the reason that it's like this currency is an infinite perspective is because the zero point 0.7 trillion is what it's actually worth, and that's a ginormous number, generally speaking. Like not actually in comparison to infinity, but infinity is sort of like a place, or that's the best way we can describe something that's like ginormously big. Obviously, infinity is too abstract that we can actually pin it down, but it's like infinity is a word we're describing for some limit. And so, because of that, infinity is like a place. And these are not my ideas. These are the ideas of Roger Penrose, one of the most famous mathematicians. He describes infinity to be like a place, or it's like a limit, but that's what I'm saying is like this zero point 0.7 trillion is something like infinity or a limit, and then Bitcoin has a specific supply, which is like 21 million, and then the market cap divided by the supply equals the price of Bitcoin that you see, which is 32,000. But Bitcoin sets what you see about themselves, sets their unit by deciding within themselves what their supply is. This arbitrary categorizing of their supply, because their supply could have been anything. And like, it's the same as saying Bitcoin isn't actually worth 32,000, because if you did that in terms of euros, it's a different number. And the supply really doesn't mean anything. It means something if you're a cryptocurrency that chooses to have a finite supply versus one that chooses to have a supply where you keep minting more of them. That's how you introduce how there's differences in the supply. But like the supply and just the price that it's arrived at is kind of arbitrary, but like currencies are infinite like this. NFTs are finite because they they have a perspective of singular things. Like a non-fungible token is meant to be one thing, but a cryptocurrency is like 21 million things. But this is like one in comparison to 21 million is like finite in comparison to infinite. But when you buy an NFT, you're just buying one object. But like having a finite perspective in terms of exchanging money is like the way anybody buys anything if they go to a retailer. Like people just buy singular objects one at a time at different times. This is a finite perspective of exchanging money. A full-blown currency is difficult to understand. Like, and like it's difficult to understand what is the value of that, because it's at a completely different end than just buying singular things, because it's the money that goes over all of the singular things you buy. Or in other words, it's like all encompassing. Like the way that the US dollar is all encompassing, it's like surrounding all objects that you can buy in terms of US dollars. Like since there's this currency that goes over all of the things you can buy, and everything you can buy is labeled in terms of that currency. Like this currency is given some sort of godlike or infinite status, where it's like all encompassing or above everything. And it's kind of like having a category and dividing within it, rather than being the like having a finite perspective is just having a point somewhere within the spectrum or within an infinite space. Like describing things to yourself in terms of singular things is the same as having a finite perspective, but like that's just the perspective that everybody has. And so that's why it's difficult to really understand what is currency. And that's why nobody is able to write off cryptocurrencies or write off fiat currencies. Like really like nobody has the knowledge to say for sure this is the currency that will win out. In the same way that we don't understand infinity. But like you can't um you can't just start making things, not the US dollar, when that's the thing we respect to be like the dollar. That's the currency that we respect to have a unit of one. It's hard to change out of that because you would just enter into something like chaos because the US dollar isn't actually worth one of anything because if you have a US dollar in terms of euros, then it's like 1.05 euros. But then in terms of a different currency than that, it's a different number. $1 in terms of any other currency is a different amount. And this is just like, in reality, there's no standard price for anything. But if you just start introducing thousands of digital currencies like they are in the crypto market, and you're going to say that, okay, these are well, like you'd have to arrive at a standard at some point that is like everyone agrees on this currency or like everyone agrees on this kind of unit. Otherwise, you won't be able to exchange anything. But like you, it wouldn't very obviously be the case that digital currencies would work. Like it's hard to imagine how the transition occurs from the standards of money that we exchange in now, and then like how would we transition to a whole new set of standards? Like I think that would probably work itself out, and it's just like I wouldn't be able to imagine how that would happen. How do we arrive at a new set of standards? It's just that you do have to have standards, otherwise everything is chaos because no dollar anywhere is actually any amount in the same respect as that. The number three is not the number three actually, and I know that you would hear that and be like, you're not allowed to say that. Um, First of all, I do have a background in mathematics, but like mathematically speaking, you're especially not allowed to say that. Like it's probably mathematicians that would get pissed at anybody for saying that three was anything other than three because they make their money or maintain their identity off of the reality of numbers, or like mathematics is good because it's true always, or like true in every language. Like three is 2 + 2 always equals four because four always equals four. But like, um, it's really like in reality, it's chaos because three isn't actually equal to three. We just ignore the reality where one number is actually every other number. The reason that, but it's this is just the infinite reality as opposed to the finite reality. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. If you have a gallon, I'm talking about one number is any other number. Basically, if you're dealing with full quantities, or like I was saying before, full categories, like a full spectrum as opposed to one point within a spectrum. One point within a spectrum is finiteness, but like NFTs are finite because they're singular objects. Like a non-fungible token means that you can't replicate that token. There's only one of them, and that's what makes it valuable. But basically, an NFT is a cryptocurrency, but with a supply of one. If you have a cryptocurrency or a currency that only has one supply, or a supply of one, this is when currency manifests itself as just an object that you can buy. Like you can buy one NFT the same way you can buy one taco or one of anything. Like that's how we best understand exchanging in money. Cryptocurrency isn't like that because if you buy a currency, then you're just buying a piece of a pool or like a piece of water or something. And so that's really abstract. Like if you buy a cryptocurrency, you're not buying the whole thing I'm saying. Or like you see how that plays itself out. If you buy a currency, it's like buying water, and that's difficult because it's hard to capture water, or like because it's characteristically in motion. But um and so there's a spectrum from finiteness to infiniteness. It's the same as saying one, two, three, four, five, and that's the finite side of it. And the other end of that spectrum is up into infinity. Like you can see that spectrum just played out on a number line. And in the same way, there's a spectrum between uh, currency and then singular things you can buy in the currency, or in other words, from infiniteness to finiteness. And so there's a spectrum between like Bitcoin and between Ethereum and the NFTs that you buy in Ethereum. And they get more like you can map out points along the spectrum. So it's like they get more, the things you buy become more like currency the more on the way up to infinity. But you can map out points along the spectrum by introducing currencies that have varying supplies, like different supplies. Like if you can also make NFTs where there's like five of them because people just like to screw with the system, or as long as it's possible, somebody's going to do it. But it's like there's actually NFTs or there's NFTs where you can buy five of them, even though it's supposed to be a non-fungible token. But it's like this is a cryptocurrency that has a supply of five. But if it was a full-blown cryptocurrency, it'd have a supply of like millions, because just in order to meet the criteria of being a cryptocurrency or a full-blown currency, what helps you is to have a supply that's really high, like in the millions, because that makes it a lot more ambiguous the way that a currency is. It makes it more infinitized. If you have a much smaller supply, then you're saying that you're something like an NFT, or just like then like anybody could buy all five of it so much easier. Like but like when it's an NFT, it's that's the same thing as having a cryptocurrency, but with a supply of one. But as time moves on, people will be filling in this spectrum with currencies of any kind of supply, anywhere from 5 to 100 to 1,000 to a million to a trillion. And these are all currencies, and they're almost all like NFTs also. But like so another reason why I'm wary about the entire crypto market that I wrote down here is that NFTs are actually probably better than cryptocurrencies, because you might actually have to work your way up to cryptocurrencies. Like before the world can really understand the value of a full-blown currency, which carries out in a more infinite way, we maybe have to understand things in terms of singular things you buy, singular digital assets like NFTs. And really, like, the NFT market is one of the only ways that we see digital assets are practically manifesting themselves, like in things that you can actually buy. The NFT market is the only way. It's like one of the only things that is flourishing in terms of digital assets. Like NFTs might actually be better because those are already very decentralized, or like there's a lot, like an NFT already provides you an individual instance um, better than a cryptocurrency. Like maybe an NFT or a collection of NFTs, since they're all singular, like in some senses NFTs are more decentralized than cryptocurrencies. And if you find a means of money that is more decentralized, this will be a better means of money than one that is more centralized, because money is better when it is liquid because it's characteristically liquid. Or like the money that is the best is the money that can go to the most places. This is partially why, even though I don't know how it would work out, why Bitcoin and Ethereum would be better long term, is because they're global and national currencies are limited to the borders of countries. And like if you're in Germany, things are listed in terms of euros, I would imagine. I don't know if they say also US dollars, but yeah, like I don't know if that's true. But if you're in the country, like if you're in China, you have to exchange in terms of the Chinese currency. And so national currencies are limited in this way. A global currency is better already than a national currency because it is more liquid. If it's more liquid, then it's more like what money actually is. And if something's more like what money actually is, then it's a better form of money. It's a better currency. Like the best currency is the most decentralized one. Saying that it's decentralized is saying that it's liquid. Like liquid is maybe even a better description than decentralization. Or because if it's the most liquid, then it goes to the most places, the way that water flows, or something like water circulates. Or I mean, like water does circulate, precipitation, whatever. But like if it's more liquid, like the US currency is the reserve currency, it has flowed to the most places across the globe. It's more liquid than any other currency. If you have a currency that's the most liquid, then that's a better currency. And so like a global currency would automatically be more liquid than a national one. But NFTs in some senses might be more liquid, but they're only a snapshot though. They're only one thing. But anyway, so like NFTs might be better. That's why I'm wary. But what I'm saying is that the reason that 3 isn't 3 is when you look at it from the categorical perspective, or from the perspective of a quantity, like uh, a gallon. You have a gallon of water. That's 1 gallon in terms of that unit. It's also 4 quarts. It's also 8 pints. It's also 16 glasses, where a glass is 8 fluid ounces. And so you see how a gallon is not, like 1 gallon isn't 1, it's actually 4 and 8 and 16 and any other number that you want to come up with. Like, I don't know if there's a word for whatever, there probably isn't a word for whatever a gallon divides a gallon by 3, but you just come up with that category arbitrarily, and now you have a word for it. At the point you have a word, then you can divide within the quantity of a gallon to say, like, 1/3 of a gallon is this, or in other words, let's say that 1/3 of a gallon is the same as a Bezos. And so 3 Bezos is the same as a gallon, the same way 4 quarts is a gallon. And really, in this way, you see how the number 1, because it's the same quantity, it's the same gallon of water that you're calling 4. In this respect, 1 is the same as 3 and as 4, as 8, as 16, and as any number that you want to imagine. But this reality is not better or worse than the reality where we say the number 3 is the number 3. 3 coffee mugs is 3 of them. Because one coffee mug is the same as 2 half coffee mugs, and 3 coffee mugs is the same as 6 half coffee mugs, or the same as 9 third coffee mugs, or whatever thing you want to say about it. In this respect, like in the respect where you're considering the unit as opposed to the number, which is just the infinite perspective as opposed to the finite perspective. In this respect, every number is every other number, and this reality is not better or worse than the reality where we say that 3 is 3. It's just that, really, humans are so stupid, but, like, and myself included, I'm not saying anybody besides me is more stupid than me. I'm saying humanity in general is not smart enough that they've arrived at, let me turn my AC off because it's affecting my sound. All right, the AC is off, and I mean, I turned it off, so it'll turn off in a second. And so worked that out, got that problem out of the way. But the world of the real is not better than the world of the fake, is a similar thing to what I just said. But the world is, like, the way that we operate as humans now, we haven't gone so far as to recognize nuances in the world of the fake. But, like, this that I'm explaining to you, the dynamic between the world of the real and the world of the fake, manifests itself pretty clearly in this thing that I'm saying about numbers, where 3 is 3, right? Except that if you want to have more fun, or you want to pretend things, so to speak, in reality, 3 is every single other number. It's actually a lot more complex to understand how 3 is every other number, because there are so many more options with that reality than the option where you're resigned to saying that 3 is 3. But this is the world that we live in, is a world that cannot get off of standards for a second to recognize nuances, or because, like, the world of the fake is so much deeper than the world of the real, because there's so many other options. But it's like 3 isn't just 3, it's actually 4 if you change the number to the unit. And that whole deal has to do with that when you say, like, 3 inches, 3 isn't better than inches and inches isn't better than 3. Actually, both of them are quantities. It's just that inch is the infinite thing where it's like it's a length or a width or a spectrum or a full category that you get to divide within it. And 3 is like this finite thing. But in order to explain anything at all, you have to have a finite combined with an infinite. It's the same as how everything is a particle and a wave. But like scientists will describe how a particle wave just applies to like particles that they look at under a microscope, but it actually applies to all objects. It's just that bigger objects that are in front of your face uh, don't vibrate or move at a different enough rate than what you're able to see, or in other words, like the objects in front of you match the perspective that you have because you're like living at the same rate as them. But like a soccer ball doesn't have to appear anywhere either. Like a soccer ball would be the same as a particle that a scientist is looking at under a microscope, um, from the perspective of a perspective big enough that like a soccer ball was really tiny, like the size of a particle. Um, like if there was a being that was as big as like God, that God is so much bigger than the earth or something, or like the universe in comparison to the earth. The universe sees the earth as just a particle because it's like it's not going to be able to keep track of where the earth is going to be, and the earth can appear anywhere. But like scientifically speaking, really every object has this particle wave problem where it's like it can appear anywhere. The same way that when you can't find your keys, they could be in a number of places. Like according to probability, your keys are going to be on one of these surfaces in your apartment, like over time. And so when you're looking for them, you don't know where they're going to appear. They could appear in a number of orbitals or possible places. Like there's percentages attached to them. The set of percentages where something could appear describes the wave likeness of any one object, and where it actually does appear, where you actually do observe it, like reality, the one point that the wave function collapses into when you actually observe it. Like it does manifest itself as one thing. This is how things are like a particle, but like the particle wave thing applies to everything, but it's like the particle is the finite part of it, wave is the infinite part of it. Like the number 3 being 3, that's just what everybody observes it as, but it's like 3 is actually that you say something is 3 inches, this is something is finite and infinite. This is like there's a spectrum between 3 and inches, and they really aren't mutually exclusive. They're not separate from each other. These two ideas, 3 and inches, that's a spectrum all its own. This phrase is like you can't separate those two things because you can't have one without the other. But like what I'm saying is that currency describes this idea how 1 gallon isn't one, it's actually every number, because when you're looking at the quantity or the category, you get to divide or you get to make up whatever within it that you want. Like you can divide that 1 into fourths or into thirds, depending on the unit that you choose. This is what currencies do. They start with a category and then they divide within it, where they're like Bitcoin has zero point 0.7 trillion of worth, but then it divides that into 21 millionths. And then what you're left with for each unit when you divide it by 21 million is like 32,000, or the price that it's reflected as. But it's like this has to come from the top down or something. It has to come from infinity, and then it's eventually presented to you finitely as like $32,000, because like 0.7 trillion would be even less digestible for you to like consider buying it. But yes, they like 3 is the same as every other number. If you don't want to, and it's not better than saying that 3 is always 3, but every single number is every single other number. We just don't go into describing that because that's chaos, but it's the same kind of chaos that would ensue in a world where there's way too many currencies, which is what we're doing. Like in some senses, this like influx of all of these new digital currencies is creating this much more chaotic environment, or it's trying to influence a world where we get off of standards for currency, or like, I mean, in general, it's just rendering money useless, but we're creating more and more points of reference between the finite end of the spectrum for currency to the infinite end, or like through this influx of digital currencies, we're introducing to ourselves, we're understanding the concept of currency itself more and more. But it's like, if this spectrum continues to get filled in, then we just start to lose sight of what money is at all, because in actuality it is completely chaos. We're just able, like, it is chaos, it is fake, it's not real like the way that people say money is, or like the way that water is. But to the extent that money isn't real is the extent that, like, that's not totally true. It's just like you're describing an infinite perspective. Like, infinity is not real, or is too abstract to describe. It's kind of like how much more real um like grabbing a handful of water is versus a handful of dirt. Handful of dirt is real. Handful of water just falls out of your hand. But you can't actually stop, like like a river is always moving. There's like, nobody really lays claim to a single point within a river. The only way that you describe motion like activity is to provide you and other people single snapshots of it. This is what, like, when Microsoft sells thousands of Xboxes, they they're like capturing a river or something. If you like, just think for a minute that Xboxes are a currency, which they are. Their price point is $400 or something like that, or it's actually like $500, versus Bitcoin's price point is like 32,000. But so Xbox is also a currency the same way Bitcoin is, because there's a supply, there's a price point, and there's a net worth. So there's, like, let's say that the total, like, if an Xbox is sold at $500, and let's say there's a supply of 1,000 of them, then how many zeros is that? Then that's 500,000. Then, like, the net worth of Xboxes is $500,000. If you have a net worth 500,000, a supply of 1,000, and then each one of them you sell for 500. But so I'm just describing how Xboxes themselves that's a currency. But why did I start describing that? Like, I'm describing that because Xboxes as a currency is describing a continuum or motion-like behavior just in the area of Xboxes. It would be like if you named the river Xbox, because they're trying to capture the power of something that's in motion by providing you single snapshots. The single snapshots are the actual Xboxes, where it's like, if something does manifest itself as a singular thing, or as a snapshot image or an object, then it has become a specific practical object in front of you. But it's like the entire cash flow is can only be represented in singular instances of Xboxes. The entire cash flow is actually more ambiguous and more amorphous than that. It's flowing everywhere. Like, and that's what you get into if you're actually allow yourself to describe Xboxes to be a currency, is you're kind of describing how they aren't real. But like, describing currency is more describing the unreality of things, or how things are fake. It's the same as saying 3 is every other number, because that's fake. But it's like, the fake world isn't worse, it's actually more interesting. And it becomes more interesting when you sell more objects or more instances of something. That really says something about the interest factor of a thing, is how many of that thing you're able to sell. Like, that they're able to create hundreds of Starbucks across the world. That means that Starbucks is more interesting than other things, basically, than any other coffee shop. But like it makes more money in some senses. It's also very liquid, and liquid is a good way of describing Starbucks. They sell liquid. They're defined by it. Like, what's more liquid than the Starbucks siren? Nothing. And they're defined by liquidity, but like Starbucks is interesting. That's why they are able to sell more of their product than anything else. Why they're able to reproduce their thing. Why there's so many Starbucks drinks that are available out in the world is because Starbucks as an idea is more interesting. When something is more interesting, it's like that's going to be represented in how many instances of that thing have manifested themselves, or you can monetize that. How much you can monetize it is how interesting it is, how much you're able to materialize off of that idea, where it is just an idea, but if you can materialize it in very many instances, like something like Starbucks, then it's more interesting. But it's like it's more interesting you capture the depth of how fake it is, or something, because like, yeah, everything is real, but don't ignore that everything is also fake, because like everything's fake, like a pet store is fake. It doesn't have to exist as that specifically, and it's also just um it's mostly full of air. The borders that you put around a pet store to capture that idea, capture the energy of it. The energy of that used to not even exist, but like um but anyway, what I'm saying is that the world of the fake is deeper in the way that the number 3, and it's deeper and more interesting, like when you see all of the different things that 3 can manifest itself as, rather than you're stuck with, oh, 3 is always 3. We're stuck with that because of things like the world of mathematics is very strict about like providing you standards for numbers, and that makes it so that you're more a lunatic if you're alluding to that one number is any other number. But like part of it's just like we don't do very well getting into that world where one number is any other number, for like the same reason that we have standards for currency, or it's like how we have one currency that governs everything, because we don't go into chaos very much, where chaos is saying that 3 is also 4 is also 5, but there's a lot of options for that. It's just like it has to do with the infinite perspective, where infinity allows you to change the thing into anything else. Stablecoins. Yeah, like too much decentralization would be a problem, is partially what I'm saying. Like too much decentralization of currency into too many different currencies, like putting money under too many different titles, makes everything more ambiguous. Like, but it's like that is what we're doing. We are traversing the world of the fake, because money is sort of fake, and now we're coming up with all of these different functions for money, all of these different cryptocurrencies that perform a different function, have a different name, do something different. You can put your money into all of these different names, like either cryptocurrencies or NFTs. Like, this is mass decentralization of money, but like mass destandardization of money, like what we name it. And this would not necessarily be a good thing for the entire crypto market, or like could be a drawback to it, is that if there's too many cryptocurrencies and we keep creating more of them, you're going to have trouble finding a standard. But it's like that also points to that you should really just invest in Bitcoin and Ethereum, because it's the only things you can point to as the standard in this really, what is otherwise a completely chaotic world. Um, but money itself is chaotic, so I don't know how you would be able to stop people from making new functions within this world. Like, in some senses, you're creating money by creating a cryptocurrency that wouldn't have existed before, and also the crypto market getting a lot bigger is not dependent on people moving their fiat money to the crypto market because as I linked a chart in the last episode about how the GDP of the world is going up considerably, like significantly, like we're creating a lot more money, and money is more and more in everybody's pockets, is what that means. Like the world is doing better at producing things. Part of that is what goes along with that is the world is producing more currencies, and like in some senses the currency just makes money because you've opened up a door into this realm of money that wasn't open before, and now you're able to capture this certain sense of money because any door that you open is to this infinite world, because money and currency is like infinite, and or it's fake, but like we're creating more money, and so it could be the case that fiat and cryptocurrency both do well into the future. I'm not really sure, but um yes. Um, Thanks for listening to that. Sorry for sorry for whatever. Sorry for something that I could apologize for, but I'll continue to work on theory that I have for currency itself rather than advocating for cryptocurrency all the time. That's something I'd like to do. But um it's just that you don't want to make the judgment your life. I don't want to be the crypto guy who thinks crypto will work, especially when I already have reservations about it. I just haven't divulged them to this point because I felt like I had to continue with the judgment that I started with, or like that's what I had to be held to. So um yeah, I was wrong in some senses to say that, to say like I was totally on board with it, or I mean, but in some senses I'm just like not divulging enough about what my true opinion is. And you don't want to make the judgment your life. You need like see the other side of it, like allow yourself to see the other side of it, so that you can be uh so that you can be more in more places. You can allow yourself to go more places. Like if you're more open-minded, you could be more you're not as restricted to something. You can be more like water or be more infinite. Not that you would necessarily want that. It's just that finiteness is more reality, and we're very stuck on the standards of reality, or always saying four is four. But like, I, th- I think in the future, as the future happens, we do take on a more infinite perspective, I believe. Like there, um, but anyway, thanks for listening to all of that jargon. That's not easy. It's not easy to listen to all of that, but yeah, I'll do more episodes in the future. Talk to you later.